The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library. Welcome to Getting to Know You. My name is Joe Nash. Today we're going to be talking about the McCormick Center for the Study of the the American Revolution. It's a department over at Siena. We have with us its director, Jennifer Dorsey, and one of the students, Greg Tirenin. So welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So Jen, before we start, it used to be called the Center for the Study of Revolutionary Era. It used to be called the Center for Revolutionary Era Studies.
Correct.
And now you're changing it to the McCormick Center for the Study of the American Revolution. Tell me about this little bit of a change, because you got a lot of some money involved for grants.
Yes, that's
and
right.
to do some new stuff. So what's the changeover?
Well, first let me start by saying that the Center for the Study of the American Revolution is focused on putting students to work in local history sites in the Capital Region and beyond, to promote New York State history, to promote the history of colonial and revolutionary New York. Mm-hmm. And in 2010, the National Endowment for the Humanities recognized our work with a grant for $500,000. And they put out to us a challenge that, they wanted to give us $500,000, but they also wanted the community to support the program by pledging another $1.5 million mm-hmm. to support and underwrite the program. And the McCormick family, the owners of Trustco Bank, who have a wonderful relationship with this community and care deeply about this community and local history.
And they went to Siena too?
And yes, okay. One of them went to Siena. They stepped forward and they offered $1 million pledge.
Oh, okay.
To underwrite the work of the McCormick Center. So now the center and our work, the work of my students, my own work, are underwritten and supported by this endowment. To honor their gift, we changed the name to the McCormick Center for the study of the American Revolution.
And it's been the McCormick Center for what, a couple years now?
2012.
Okay. So the purpose is to you sort of put together the study of history with working with like archivists, historical centers, museums,
libraries.
Yes. What's now, has that always been the purpose?
Yeah, that's always been the purpose. That we're educating students in history, but we also want Siena students to have real-world experience.
It's not just in the classroom.
It's not just in the classroom. So they come to the classroom to get content knowledge, to get information mm-hmm. about history, to get skills for research and writing and presentation. But the expectation is that they're going to go out to a local history organization and do work in mm-hmm. those organizations, help build the capacity of those organizations to deliver programs.
Like, for example, I see you work here with Saratoga Battlefield.
Yes.
Tenbrook Mansion. Mm-hmm. The Herkimer House and
tell me some of
the places.
So Saratoga Battlefield is our original partner, our primary partner. We offer an internship through Siena College at Saratoga Battlefield. Students can go and work in lots of different fields in Saratoga Battlefield. But over the years, we've developed more and more partners, mm-hmm. more agencies looking for help. And this year, we were approached by Cordell Reeves, who is a historic preservation and history interpreter specialist at the New York State Office of Park, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. And he invited our students to do some research that would help two state sites, the Herkimer home mm-hmm. and Washington's headquarters in Newburgh. And Greg was in that class and did some work for those.
Okay. So Greg, you're a history major. I am. Now, did you come to Siena? Did you know about the center, or were you just going to be history first?
I did. It was one of the primary reasons why I came to Siena. I specialize, I guess you could say, in early American history. So having such great faculty and a specific center devoted to the study of the American Revolution was really one of the primary reasons.
Were you interested in the American Revolution?
Oh, yeah, specifically.
Not just American. Mm-hmm. Okay. And where are you from?
Rome, New York.
Oh,
right
Rome.
in the
Okay.
middle of the state.
There's a lot of Revolutionary War stuff out that way.
Yep, I volunteer at Fort Stanwix.
Okay, and before we started, you were telling me you were a reenactor?
Yeah, I do a little bit of reenacting
Okay.
just there on site at Fort Stanwix.
Okay.
We have so many visitors from across the world. I'd like to say they come specifically to Rome, but that's not always the case. We get a lot of people just experiencing the Northeast, and they always like to stop by Fort Stanwix. It's a great site. The rangers are great. There's so many volunteers that do so much work to make it a great experience for visitors.
So when you did your work, when you left the classroom, as Jen just said, what was your, I guess, I don't know what the word is, what was your internship or whatever? Where did you work outside the classroom?
Well, we partnered, there were 4 people in the class, so
Okay.
there was nowhere to hide. It was just the four of us, and we compiled research and then turned the research into a manageable paper, which we presented to each of the historic sites, Herkimer Home and Washington's headquarters, in the hope that they would use it to improve their exhibits and their museums. So having the opportunity to work in a capacity that lets our work live on beyond the filing cabinet was a great opportunity.
What did you find? Did you do any original research? Or were you building on, or Jen, maybe you could
Well,
tell
let me just say that the way the McCormick Center works is that we reach out to historic sites or museums or libraries, and we ask them, what would you like to know more about? If you had the time and the energy and the
they
effort
may have
to do
things
research,
that they haven't even, that needs cataloging, or
Right.
they haven't even looked into yet.
Right, and in both of these cases, let's use the Washington headquarters. They wanted to develop a new exhibit or provide more information to their audience about the African American experience in the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
And it's something that, with a small staff that does a lot of different things at the museum, they didn't really have the time to devote to sitting down in the library and doing the research. So my students took their questions and then went and worked with a librarian to find the answers.
Oh, okay.
And wrote up the reports. They each took a different piece of the questions and wrote up reports, and we put it all together, and we had a meeting with representatives from Washington headquarters and presented our findings.
And what is the Washington headquarters? Is it a house or a fort, or what is it?
It's a house in Newburgh, New York, where Washington stayed and kept his camp towards the end of the war. And of course, Washington had dozens of headquarters throughout the war, but toward the tail end, he was headquartered at Newburgh. And of course, there was the Newburgh conspiracy, where certain elements of the army considered revolting against the congressional authority because of the way that they had been treated and the lack of pay and recognition for their service. And it was where Washington sort of diffused the tensions between the army and the government, and that's why it's so well known, more so than the other headquarters.
Now, down there, did they make a display about this?
They did.
About the war.
Or no, about the work that you did.
Well, we just turned in our work in December, so yeah.
That ultimately will turn into something where people can come and.
Yeah, so I mean,
okay.
the hope is that they're educational professionals, right? They're going to take this scholarly piece that my students wrote, and they're going to sit down and decide, what's the best way to share this with our visitors, right?
Okay.
Do we do an exhibit? Do we write little pamphlets? Do we put it on our website? So, but Greg's absolutely right. The expectation is, or the hope is, that we provided them with enough new information and interesting information that my students' work will live on, in either an exhibit or a handout or something. Yeah.
So, and what else? Now, Greg, let me just ask you a couple more questions. What else is part of? We have that component where you're working out in the field. What else? What are some of the classroom classes? Not just history classes. Is there other parts of this that you?
Well, of course, Dr. Dorsey teaches courses in the American Revolution, specifically New York State history, labor history, all those things. And I know she's a big fan of the seminar-style classes where it's entirely discussion-based. You read basically a book a week. You come in, discuss it. That's the in-class part, and then you have to be engaged outside the classroom to produce something.
A book a week?
Does that seem cold? I would say also that our students in the McCormick Center, we also require them to take courses outside of history. So maybe take English literature in the Age of the Enlightenment. Right?
Does it have to be? Do the classes have to coincide with more or less like 1760 to the 1812. That's your era, revolutionary era.
Well, colonial and revolutionary. So,
So-
I like students to, take classes, say, if they're going to take English classes, take classes that do 17th and 18th century America or 17th or 18th century Britain. But I also ask them to take classes in the sciences or in business. Because when you go to work for a museum, you can't just know history. You have to know maybe something about management, maybe something about marketing. Okay, great, you've put together this great exhibit. How are you going to market that to the world? So things like that.
So one thing in all your McCormick Center, information here is I keep seeing this term, public history. I don't think it's that new, or maybe it is. New in history obviously doesn't. But tell me about this term, public history, what that is, and maybe how it fits into.
Right. So, of course, historians work in all kinds of fields. They work in museums, and they work in libraries, and they work in archives. I'm an academic historian. I work in the academy. I publish. I teach. Most of my students are probably not going to have careers in the academy, and that's fine. They might want to work be an historian, work in a library, or work in a museum, or what have you. So the idea of this program is to sort of expose students to all the different kinds of careers that are possible in history, right? Okay. That you can be an historian and work in a museum. You can be an historian and work in government. You can be an historian and work in a library.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and have a satisfying career.
So,
right, Joe?
Yes. I took a lot of history classes.
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
So, Greg, now, have you graduated yet? Or
Oh, no, I'm a sophomore.
You're a sophomore. Okay. So I know it's too early to ask your future plans because everyone always changes them. But what do you foresee a future in this field of public history?
Well, I'd like to be an academic historian, but the great thing about the McCormick Center is that it gives me a primer in public history and in other disciplines, even non-history disciplines. I'm taking a course on business law now, which plays into so many different fields. So it's great to I guess not put all your eggs in one basket. So just having such a broad primer in all disciplines relating to what you're actually interested in.
Yeah, and I just want to say that, as a professor at an undergraduate institution, exclusively undergraduate. I mean, I don't have graduate students, right? I mean, I'm interested in students seeing all the different ways they can put their knowledge to work, right? So perhaps Greg will go to graduate school and become an academic historian, or maybe he'll go to law school, or maybe he'll become a librarian. And I just, he's 18 to 21 years old, just have exposure to all of that, so he can make an informed choice.
Now, do the students, when they get their certificate in Revolutionary Era Studies, is it, do they do these, like these internships, or do they only do one over the 4 years, or they do one each year?
I hope not.
Well, I mean, do they have to do, like, you went to Newburgh this year, would you possibly go to Saratoga Battlefield next year, Tenbrook Mansion third year? Do you do one thing a year, or how does that?
So all of my classes are taught with a public component, right? So in all of my classes, students do some sort of work involved with another partner, right? So anybody who takes a class with me is going to get exposed to how history happens in the real world. But yes, all of them are required to do an internship. A lot of them will study abroad. Greg's going to study abroad in London next year, and then he'll come back and he'll have an opportunity to do an internship. And I have lots of projects going on in the community. I'm also actively involved in the history community. I'm the president of the Board of Trustees of the Albany County Historical Association, and I can always find ways to, put students to work if they want to work on a discrete project in a semester or over a year or in a class.
So you sort of try to come up with some of the ideas. Now, do the students ever come up with their own? Or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that absolutely happens. I mean, a student like Greg or other students who come to Siena specifically to do work with the McCormick Center, they already have sort of strong ideas about what they want to do.
Oh, okay.
And oftentimes it's because they have a strong idea that encourages me to say, all right, you want to do this, let's reach out, let's find some agency in the community that will make it possible for us to do this. So right now we're working with Fort Ticonderoga to develop an undergraduate residential internship where students could go and live and work at Fort Ticonderoga for 3 weeks and learn about all the facets of that work up there.
They would live at the fort.
They'd live in housing provided by the fort, right. And
I would want to live at the fort.
You would want to live at the fort.
It's understandable.
And they're going to work on exhibit research, and they're going to work on educational programming, and they're going to do some transcriptions of 18th century documents. So it'll be a team of students going up.
So now I'm thinking, now as you're telling me about all these places, you got Fort Ticonderoga, Herkimer, Newburgh. Are you slowly expanding? Do you see yourself working farther out? Or
Well,
just
I mean,
at the
certainly
moment?
in the summer, I have students, who go home for the summer to Rome or Plattsburgh or what have you, and I want to be able to have relationships with the history communities there, so that if my student wants to work on something in the summer, there's an opportunity for him or her to do that. But there's a lot of history in New York.
I know.
And a lot of revolutionary history in New York, and so.
But it's not, you're not exclusively to New York State, are you? Or are
Yes, I'm exclusively to New York. So New York is my my first love, my passion, my commitment.
Okay, so, all right, so now every year, well, you have a lot of events for the public, not just for your students. What are some of them? You have one coming up in March with the musicians of Malwick.
So one of the things that New York is celebrating this year and next year is the anniversary of women's suffrage. So of course there was a women's suffrage movement in New York. Elizabeth Cady Stanton is from New York. And
they had the big meeting in New York State.
And they had the big meeting in Seneca Falls, yes. Susan B. Anthony lived and worked in New York for a while, right? New York voted against suffrage in 1915 and then voted for suffrage in 1917. And we, at the McCormick Center, it's not precisely the Revolutionary era, but certainly it's an outcome of the Revolution, right?
Yes.
I mean, the idea of giving women the right to vote dates back to the Revolution, right? So Tenbrook Mansion and the McCormick Center and the musicians of Malwick are teaming up to offer programming in March around the celebration of the suffrage movement. The musicians of Malwick are going to do a performance of women composers. They have also hired a woman composer to write a piece that will use words from suffragette literature.
Okay.
So all the lyrics are going to be from the texts of women's suffrage leaders, and that piece will be performed by the Siena Chorus. It's going to happen on March 20th.
This is an original work.
Original work, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, the Tenbrook Mansion, the Albany County Historical Association, is going to host a lecture event featuring Dr. Susan Goudier on March 16th, and she is going to come and talk about anti-suffrage and pro-suffrage cartoons, political cartoons in New York in the years leading up to
And then where, you mentioned the concert's March 20th, where is it going to be?
That is actually going to be at Druthers in Broadway. It is on Broadway. Druthers is a brewery, and they have an enormous space, and they're very close to Albany County Historical Association, and they have a deep interest in local history, and they have agreed to make an anti-suffrage brew for the month of March. And so you can come and you can learn about the suffrage movement, and then you can go and hear this beautiful music by this chamber orchestra and an original piece sung by Siena Chorus, and drink anti-suffrage beer.
I see. That sounds like a good way to get
It's
people there.
lots of ways to talk about history, right? It doesn't all have to be, in a classroom reading a book, although we should still do that.
And as far, of course. Now, Greg, and you're in this program. I think Jen was telling me before. There's about 10 students getting the certificate, more or less, 10.
Basically.
Right. There are about 10 students getting the certificate, but there are other students who'll come in and out of the program to do an internship with one of my partners or be engaged with my partners in some way.
So how are you finding today's young people? Are they interested in history? We always hear that they're not, but obviously we have students like Greg here that really are. And actually, you came to Siena interested in history. So is that are students still interested in history, even though we seem to hear that they're not, but they obviously are, it seems.
Well, do you want to talk?
Greg, why don't you?
Well, I hope they are, otherwise I won't have much of a future in history. But yeah, everyone that I've met at Siena who is a history major is a history major because it's their passion, it's their true love. And I think that history will have a future through organizations like the McCormick Center that actively engage students and communities to make sure that history appeals to people and continues to do so.
So
I think, can I just say that
Sure.
my experience with students is that I think students are inherently interested in history. I had a student who signed up to be a history major the other day, and he said to me, I am fascinated by how people got stuff done without technology. Like, that's a legitimate question to somebody, who's 18 to 21 years old. And I love that they want to be a history major so they can figure that out. Like, how do you achieve a revolution when you can't tweet about it,
Well,
right?
do you find the students are more interested when they leave the classroom and they're doing all this?
I do think that there's too much of a divide between history that happens at the college or any college or the academy and history that happens in museums. And one of the things I'm trying to do is to get students to see that history education and history knowledge is all around them, right? And go and learn history in the classroom, but also go learn it at a historic site. Go learn it at a talk at the library. Go learn it in all these other places and contribute to it. That's the other thing.
And I think people can see this if you go to the website for the McCormick Center. There's a little 10-minute video. One of the students went to Colonial Williamsburg.
Yes,
and he was
every semester, or once, we've had 5 students go and study at Colonial Williamsburg.
And he was and you can watch his video, but he was very fascinated with the tools and how they build things. And so is that, you have students go every year down there?
Yeah, so I have a student who just came back. So I have a program where students can go, Greg's going to go study abroad in London, but I have students who can go study abroad at Colonial Williamsburg. And they'll spend a semester at the College of William and Mary taking classes. And as part of their study, they'll do an internship at the Colonial Williamsburg site, the historic site, 18th century historic site. And they will also tour all of the other colonial and revolutionary sites in Virginia.
Oh, wow. Now, Greg, what are you going to be doing in London? Do you know yet?
Well, I don't know quite yet. I'm just in the process of applying now, but the school has this great internship program where you take courses through Imperial College London, and you also are put into an internship. It could be anything, in my case, anything from an historical site to working in Parliament. So I'm not sure quite yet, but I'm looking forward to it.
The other point of view of the American Revolution.
That's great. And that's great. And that's absolutely great. Can I talk about one more thing that I
You may.
Thank you, before you cut me off. So I just wanted to mention that in addition to regular programming, the Day of Living History and the Thompson Lecture that'll happen this spring, the McCormick Center has been awarded a $200,000 grant, another $200,000 grant, to do a teacher's workshop this summer at Siena College about Albany County Shaker history.
Okay, I did see that on the website. I wasn't sure whether you want to talk about it. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would like to mention it in case there are any teachers watching.
The Shaker, that's a big part of the Capital
Albany
District.
History. Yeah,
okay,
that's right.
So sure, what is this?
So the way it works is that the workshop is open to all K through 12 educators, whether they're in private schools or public schools, charter schools. If you could be a homeschool teacher, you can work in any discipline. And if you have an interest in Shaker history, you apply to the program and you'll spend a week at Siena College. You'll receive a stipend of $1,200 to cover your expenses. And during the workshop, we will go and visit the Watervliet Shaker site, which is the original Shaker site, and Ann Lee's.
Sure, over by the airport.
Yes, by the airport. We'll go and visit Shaker Museum Mount Lebanon, which is in eastern New York, right by the Massachusetts border. And then we're going to visit Hancock Shaker Museum, which is right across the border in Massachusetts. And we are going to have scholars coming in from all over the country to talk about Shaker Museum and, Shaker music and Shaker art and Shaker architecture and design and theology and just it's all Shakers all the time for 1 week, and teachers can come and just immerse themselves and enjoy the week and get paid.
Now, is there information on the website?
Yes.
And then is there a limit to how many students? Or
well, there'll be we can have up to 72 teachers. That's going to be offered 1 week, the week of June 19th, and I can have 36 teachers there. And then the second week starts the following Sunday, and again 36 teachers. So, and the teachers will come from all over the country. I did this workshop in 2013, and I had teachers from Hawaii and Texas.
Oh, really?
Yes, and And so teachers will apply and come from all over the country.
So-
but of course, I'd really like to have a healthy pool of Capital Region teachers.
So you running this, obviously.
I run this,
All right.
yes.
So you have an interest in the Shakers too?
I
besides
do,
the
yeah.
Revolution? All right.
Yeah.
So how
well,
many?
I mean, the Shakers, they are connected with revolutionary
Yeah,
history,
yeah.
right? They had moved into the Capital Region in the 1770s. They were persecuted during the war. Yeah.
So Jen, you're big on getting out of the classroom.
Big on getting out of the classroom. I am. There's so much to do in New York and in the Capital Region in particular.
When you've done this, have you had 50 or 60 people doing this?
The Shaker workshop?
Yeah.
Yeah, last time I had 80 school teachers.
Oh, wow.
Like I said, and I had several from New York, Maine, New Hampshire, Texas.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Yeah, so the deadline to apply is March 1st. There is an application process. It's basically just a letter sort of telling me, where where are you in technology? Are you in music? What kind of teacher are you? And what do you think a week of learning about Shaker history in New York how that could contribute to the way you teach?
Is there information about that on the McCormick Center?
Yes, and if you go to www.siena.edu/Shaker workshop, you will find all the information that you need.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot going on at the McCormick Center besides studying the American Revolution.
It's all related to the American Revolution, right? And the birth of our nation and how we came to be who we are.
Very good. Well, thank you for coming, Jen.
Thank you.
Greg, good luck.
Thank you.
And have fun in London.
I will.
That sounds like a good time. So, that is it for this time of Getting to Know You, and we'll see you next time.